All right, we're all trying to improve our skills when it comes to fishing. So I got 27 small improvements that really have made a huge difference for me this past year, as I have had my best year ever. I'm talking numbers, I'm talking size, I'm talking just pure enjoyment from the sport. Now, let's get off with number one, which is going to be the unconfidence lure. So I have 6 rods behind me, and one of those lures on those rods is a lure that I'm not super confident in catching fish on, and I will keep it on my kayak and in my arsenal until I become comfortable and can consistently catch fish after fish after fish. And this past year, my favorite unconfidence lure has been the Yamatanuki, and so I got a video for that. I'll throw it in the description below, but that thing absolutely slayed for me this past year. All right, small change number 2, and this one's really for those just getting into the sport, is hook sets are free, right? Especially if you're finesse fishing, it's gonna be really difficult to detect those bites, especially if you have a lower end rod that isn't very sensitive. And so at first, if you feel something and you're not quite sure, you're like, oh, it's been a weed for the last 5 times, and you're just not quite sure the difference between a fish and a weed or whatever it is, hook sets are free, folks. Go ahead and rip some lips, and man, you may be surprised what's on the other end of the line. Small change number 3, and this one really gave me some serious yardage, is a pre-fishing strategy, right? I always say that a goal without a plan is just a wish. So doing a little pre-fishing strategy is gonna go a long way. I recently had Drew Gregory on the Kayak Fishing Obsessed live show and the podcast that I do, and he shares how he goes through his pre-fishing strategy. And this is a pro, right? He's hopping on Google Earth Pro, he's going through, he's marking spots that look fishy, and over time, you become really good at that. So put in that little extra work before you even put your line in the water, and you'll like those results. All right, number 4, more time on the water, right? I mean, just by being out there, trying out new lures, you're going to evolve as an angler. You're going to know where the fish are, you're going to know where the fish are not. You're going to improve your casting accuracy, you're going to improve your hook sets. So when you hop on social media, instead of getting discouraged after you see all these individuals catching fish after fish after fish, understand that they're out on the water day after day after day, putting in probably 20x more time than you are in the water. So don't get frustrated or discouraged through that. Just know that more time on the water, of course, you are going to evolve as an angler. All right, small change number 5 is become an expert in that target fish you are trying to catch. Figure out how to pattern them based off of the season and where they're supposed to be in your bodies of water. Try to figure out what type of predator are they and how do they hunt. Spend less time on the latest gear and tackle and lures, and put that same amount of time in understanding, becoming an expert in that target fish you're trying to catch, and man, it will pay dividends. All right, the next tip is don't horse in your fish. I know it can get excited, you got a big one on the line, and a lot of people think I got to get that thing to me as fast as I possibly can, or I just have a higher chance of losing it. But a lot of times when they do that, they actually snap their line, bend out their hook. There may be some times where you need to horse it out of cover, especially it depends on where you're fishing. But if you're out in open water and there's no place that a fish can dive and break you off, just dance with it, steady pressure, no slack in the line, and slowly tire that fish out. Bring them right to you. All right, the 7th small change that's really helped me out a lot is really visualizing the catch with what's in your hands, right? Did you just reline your reel? And did you remember to set the drag correctly? What type of hook? Do you have a small gauge wire and you're fishing a Ned rig? Well, a strong hook set might rip out that Ned rig because it's a smaller gauge wire. Do I have a jig on? I'm gonna need to put a lot of force to get that thicker gauge wire through that bone and tendon and cartilage of that bass's mouth. So just thinking through with what's in your hands, especially if you carry multiple rods and reels, is really going to pay off so you don't lose that fish the next time you hook up with it. All right, number 8, and this one's more kind of a mental approach to it, is adopting the 1% rule. I know it's really easy to hop on social media or follow your favorite content creator and to see them consistently catch monster after monster, but they cannot be your competition. Only you can be your competition. Guys, they get skunked just like you do. They just don't show it in their videos. The idea behind the 1% rule is just simply the next time you go out, just do something, put in the work, try to be 1% better than you were the last time, and you will start to see some serious gains. All right, the next tip is keep moving until you start to gain some clues, right? You might have heard it said that 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water. I actually believe it's like 95% of the fish are in like 3 to 4% of the water. And so it's really easy to go to that favorite honey hole and just to continue to fish, and before you know it, 2 hours went by and you haven't caught anything. So stay on the move if you can, right? I know sometimes being a bank angler is a little more difficult, but stay on the move until you catch a fish, and then start picking apart and doing a quick post-mortem on that fish that you caught, right? What was the water clarity? Where were you? Were you next to timber? Were you next to a grass line? Start doing a post-mortem on your retrieve. Everything that you were doing so you can start to pattern bass over the period of that day. All right, so the next tip is going to be varying your retrieve, right? I know a lot of times when you try to learn a new lure, you hop online, you go to your favorite, content creator, they teach you how to do it. But fish react differently throughout the year to different speeds of your particular lure. So try fast. If that's not working after 10 minutes, kind of go down to medium, maybe you could vary it to slow. But that's not the only 3 retrieves, slow, medium, and fast, right? A lot of times what I like to doing is a quick, fast, 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 kill it. Fast, 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 kill it. And a lot of times they'll smash it on that pause. All right, the next tip is, a lot of people do research and you keep hearing over and over and over again, bang your lure up against timber and knock it against rocks. But what if you simply don't have that around you, right? You're gonna have to create your own deflection. So the fast, fast, fast stop, give it some pops every once in a while. Just make it do some crazy things. It's going to get that reaction bite from that bass if the straight retrieve is not working for you. All right, I know this one's gonna be a little controversial, but I only fish natural colors, right? I believe that bass only see 2 colors anyways, which is gonna be your reds and your greens. Everything else is just a shade of that. But I always just fish natural colors. You won't see me fishing some crazy neon color, and I've had a lot of success with that. And if you're starting out, you might be thinking, hey, what's a great natural color to start with? And man, I always go green pumpkin. I use green pumpkin on my skirted jigs. I use green pumpkin with my soft plastics, and I've had my best year ever. And the next tip is learn how to tie good knots. If you don't know how to tie a knot, tie a lot is going to come back and haunt you. And so a good place to start is the Palomar knot and kind of build up from there. I've seen some absolutely horrendous knots over time, which is basically just an overhand knot on top of an overhand knot on top of an overhand knot. And man, you don't want to learn that lesson on a potential personal best. Trust me. I have a video on how to tie the Palomar knot. It's like a minute-long video, so I'll throw that in the description notes. All right, the next tip is checking your hook sharpness. And so a really great, easy way to do this is just to take your hook and scratch it along your nail. And if it leaves like a white mark behind it, your hook is good to go. But a lot of times, if you're fishing and you get hooked up on something, a lot of those cheaper hooks are not going to hold their sharpness. So you can either, 1, invest in higher quality hooks, which I recommend, or 2, just have a hook sharpener on board with you somewhere. Like I said earlier, you're trying to set that hook through bone and ligaments and cartilage, and without a sharp hook, that is not going to go well for you. All right, guys, the next tip is to fish wind-blown shores. The idea here is that all the insects and all the debris and everything is getting pushed to that shore, and what eats all those things are all the small bait fish, and of course, what follows them are going to be the largemouth bass, and of course, you are following them. So if you're looking for bass in particular and you're coming up short, that might be a strategy for you to give you a higher percentage of catching some. All right, the next tip I have for you is wear polarized sunglasses, right? Not only is it gonna protect you from the UV rays, which is really harsh on the water, it's also gonna take the glare off the water. It's gonna allow you to see the outlines of fish. It's gonna allow you to see underwater timber, where fish are gonna be held up against. It's gonna allow you to see underwater weed lines, which fish are usually hiding in because they're ambush predators. Not only that, but if you're ripping a lure out of a tree and it's coming 100 miles an hour back to you and hit you in the face, you're gonna want some type of protection. And they can get really expensive, like hundreds of dollars. I just used the Cast Cray skitaways for like 20 bucks, and I think I've lost 3 pairs so far this year. So buying cheap sunglasses is kind of the way to go. Maybe someday I'll upgrade to a nicer pair, but at the rate of which I lose them and drop them in the water, not anytime soon. All right, so the next one's gonna be a little controversial, and I actually have some mixed feelings on it as well, because it's not all bad, but avoid the fishing apps. And I did a video on this, and I'll throw that video in the description below. However, I believe, like I said, some of the apps and some of the information it tells you is really great. But there's some parts of apps that I believe will give you short-term gains at long-term losses. And so if you're interested in hearing more about that, that video link is in the description below. All right, the next tip for you is not every fish needs to rip the lips off that bass hook set, right? Some do, right? If you're fishing a frog, you're trying to bury 2 hooks a lot of times. Those hooks are a thicker gauge. You're gonna need a more powerful hook set, a more stiffer rod in order to do that. If you're fishing jigs, so forth and so on, you're gonna need a more powerful hook set. However, if you're fishing a lighter gauge wire, like a Ned rig or something like that, a hook set like that will actually bend that hook right out of their mouth with too much power. So just keep that in mind. I know there's a lot of videos out there where everyone's just monster hook sets, but not every fishing style requires that. All right, so the next tip is one that's really helped me evolve as an angler, which is starting a YouTube channel. Because when you teach something, man, you really have to have it dialed in, and it's really helped me evolve as an angler and my understanding of fishing. Because when I do the research, before I do my videos, I'm finding out things I never knew, I'm implementing those. So if that's something you've been thinking about for a while, you're like, oh, I want to start a channel, there's a lot of auxiliary benefits you're going to get from that. All right, the next tip is, especially this is you're fishing topwater, if you have a blow up and they miss it, right? Instead of throwing out that same lure in the same spot, always have a wacky rigged Senko set up. Throw that maybe 5 yards past where that blow up was, and a lot of times those fish will nail that Senko on the follow up. So that's a really great tip. I use that all the time, and you'd be surprised how many fish you pick up. The next tip for you is to find those low pressured fishing areas, right? And this is where I believe kayak fishing shines, and I've seen a ton of success, is getting to the places where either bank anglers can't get to or bass boats aren't willing to go to, and maybe only fishing kayaks can get to. And when you're in those spots, man, there are some giants back in there. But it's going to take a little bit of extra work. You got to pull your kayak, go a little adventure fishing, but man, I believe that's part of the fun of it. So if that sounds exciting to you, maybe getting into a fishing kayak may be perfect for you. And the next tip is bass like to school up. So if you find one, there's likely more there. So stick around for 10-15 minutes, try a few different lures, different presentations, because if there's one, there's likely more. Which brings me to my next tip, which is don't leave fish to find fish, right? There's only maybe a few times throughout the year that I recommend just continuing to move and continue to fish. However, if you find one and you're on them, stay there, right? I've done this too. I don't know what mentally goes through my brain, but after I catch some, I just want to continue moving on to my next honey hole. But man, stop, fish it out a little bit, start picking it apart. You should be happy with your results. Next small change is, especially for fishing in the summer and you have access to a boat, or even if you don't, if you're bank angling, fishing the shadows during the summer is going to produce more fish for you, right? Fish like to stay out of the heat, and so anything that's a shadow, if you learn to skip your lures, you can get up under those overhangs, a lot of the trees that come up out over the water, and that's where a lot of these fish are hiding. So find the shadows, find the fish, especially in the summer heat. The next tip is fish runoffs, right? So if you think of a runoff or water that's coming into a body of water, a lot of times that is bringing a lot of insects, a lot of debris, and it's like a conveyor belt of food for fish, especially bass. So they'll sit on the outsides, and when they see something come rolling through, they'll come out and snatch it. A perfect opportunity to throw your lure in there and pick up some bass. So find those runoffs and you will find the fish. The next small change is just understanding that different lures perform better in different parts of the years, especially because those bass have different appetites and they're feeding differently in different places throughout the year. So there are some lures that perform year round, but there are also some lures that you can use that perform better in the spring, or perform better in the fall, or perform better in the summer. So do your research, find out what those are, and use them and try them out. It kind of goes back to the unconfidence lure, and I did this for a long time. You learn a certain way how to fish a particular lure. It's how you caught your first bass, and that is like all you have in your tackle box. And that's going to be great, and you'll continue to catch the same amount of fish and the same size fish with that particular lure. But certain lures will produce different size fish, and so dialing that in, if you're on the search for just larger fish, you're going to have to change things up from time to time. The next tip is, if you're not in a fishing kayak, man, get yourself into a fishing kayak. There's a lot of advantages of fishing from a kayak, but I also want to keep it real because there's also some disadvantages as well, and I recently did a video on that called "Don't Buy a Fishing Kayak Unless You Can Handle These 9 Things." You can check that out right there. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.